My name is Margaret Wilson. I'm 58 years old, divorced for nearly 15 years now, and I have one daughter, Sophia, who just turned 32 last month. Sophia has been married to Daniel for 10 years. A decade that I've spent biting my tongue more times than I care to count. She also has two beautiful children. My grandson Anthony, who's 8, and my granddaughter Isabella, who's 6. Looking back at my life, I realize it's been a series of sacrifices, one after another, like stepping stones across a river that never seemed to end. I worked 2 jobs when Sophia was young after her father left us for his 20-something secretary. I put my dreams on hold, dreams of opening my own little flower shop, where I could spend my days surrounded by the vibrant colors and gentle fragrances that have always brought me peace. Instead, I worked as a receptionist during the day and waited tables at night, just to make sure Sophia had everything she needed. Dance lessons, braces, college tuition. I wanted to give her the opportunities one never had. When she met Daniel during her junior year of college, I had my reservations. There was something in his eyes, a coldness that flickered beneath his charm. But Sophia was head over heels in love. Who was I to stand in the way of her happiness? Besides, he came from what seemed like a good family, had a decent job at an accounting firm, and treated her like a princess. At least that's what she told me, and that's what I saw when they were around me. They got married right after graduation. I emptied my savings account to help pay for the wedding. "It's your special day," I told her, even as I watched my retirement fund dwindle. "That's what mothers do, right? We give and give until there's nothing left, and then somehow we find a way to give more." After they had Anthony, I moved closer to them, into a small apartment about 20 minutes away. I wanted to be near my grandson and later my granddaughter. When Sophia decided to go back to work part-time as a graphic designer, I offered to watch the kids. 3 days a week, I'd drive to their suburban home and spend the day with my grandchildren. I never asked for payment, they were my flesh and blood after all. Besides, I knew they were saving for a bigger house. 6 months ago, Sophia called me in tears. Daniel had been laid off from his job, and they were struggling to make ends meet. Without hesitation, I offered to move in with them temporarily. I could help with the kids full-time, contribute to the household expenses, and give them breathing room until Daniel found another position. "You do that for us, Mom?" Sophia had asked, her voice thick with gratitude. "Of course, sweetheart. That's what family is for." I sublet my apartment, packed my essential belongings, and moved into their guest bedroom within a week. It was supposed to be temporary, 3 months at most, Daniel had assured me. The arrangement worked well at first. I took care of the children, cooked meals, cleaned the house, and even contributed $800 a month toward their mortgage. Daniel spent his days supposedly job hunting, though he was often out of the house for hours without explanation. When he was home, he was glued to his computer or phone, barely acknowledging my presence. Sophia was grateful for my help, but I could see the strain in her eyes. She was working longer hours to compensate for the loss of Daniel's income, coming home exhausted, only to find Daniel had done nothing around the house all day. But whenever she questioned him, he'd snap at her or give vague answers about networking opportunities and promising leads. I kept my observations to myself. This was their marriage, their life. I was just there to help until they got back on their feet. 3 months turned into 4, then 5. Daniel still hadn't found a job, or so he claimed. I began to notice small things disappearing around the house. My silver bracelet that had belonged to my mother. A pair of diamond earrings Sophia's father had given me on our 5th anniversary, before everything fell apart. Small amounts of cash from my wallet. At first, I thought I was becoming forgetful. I searched everywhere, convinced I'd misplaced these items. But deep down I knew. The way Daniel's eyes avoided mine when I mentioned the missing jewelry. The way he suddenly had money for golf outings with friends when he was supposedly broke. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to create tension in their marriage or risk my relationship with my daughter. So I said nothing. I just became more careful, hiding my remaining valuables in a locked box that I kept in the back of my closet. Then came the lottery ticket. It wasn't a huge jackpot, just a scratch-off that I bought on impulse while picking up milk at the corner store. I scratched it in the car and nearly dropped it when I saw that I'd won $5,000. I sat there, hands shaking, thinking about all the possibilities. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough to put toward my flower shop dream. enough to give me a small start when I moved back to my own place. I drove home with a smile on my face, a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. This was my chance, a small miracle when I needed it most. When I got home, Daniel was sprawled on the couch watching sports, beer in hand. Sophia was still at work and the kids were at school. I debated whether to share my good news but decided against it. Something told me to keep it to myself, at least for now. "How was your morning, Margaret?" Daniel asked without looking away from the TV. "Fine," I replied, tucking the lottery ticket into my pocket. "Just ran some errands." That night, I called the lottery office to verify my winnings and arrange for collection. They told me I could come in the next day to claim my prize. I went to bed early, planning to visit the lottery office first thing in the morning. I've always been a light sleeper, especially in recent years. Maybe it's age, or maybe it's the weight of worries that seem to accumulate with each passing year. So when my bedroom door creaked open at 2:17 a.m., I remember checking the glowing red numbers on my digital clock. I was instantly alert, though I kept my breathing deep and regular, feigning sleep. Through barely open eyes, I watched a shadow slip into my room. Daniel. Moving with surprising stealth for a man his size, he approached my dresser where I kept my purse. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched him open my wallet and rifle through it. When he didn't find what he was looking for, he turned to my nightstand. What he didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment. After noticing money and valuables disappearing, I'd set a trap. The lottery ticket was safely tucked away in my bra while I slept. An old woman's paranoia that turned out to be justified. In the top drawer of my nightstand, where I'd conspicuously placed my wallet earlier that evening while Daniel was watching, I'd set a mousetrap. The sharp snap followed by Daniel's howl of pain was both terrifying and vindicating. I sat up immediately, turning on my bedside lamp as if startled from sleep. "What are you doing in my room?" I demanded, though we both knew exactly what he was doing. Daniel stood there, cradling his injured hand, his face contorted with pain and rage. The mousetrap still clung to his fingers. "What the hell, Margaret?" he hissed through clenched teeth. "What kind of sick person sets traps in their drawers? What kind of sick person sneaks into their mother-in-law's room in the middle of the night to steal from her?" I countered, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. The commotion woke Sophia, who appeared in the doorway in her nightgown, hair disheveled, eyes wide with confusion. "What's going on?" "Mom." "Daniel." Daniel's expression shifted instantly, pain giving way to calculation. "Your mother's lost her mind, Sophia. I heard a noise and came to check on her, and she had some kind of trap set up in her drawer. Look what she did to me." He held up his hand, where an angry red welt was forming across his fingers. I met my daughter's confused gaze. This was the moment of truth, the moment I had to decide whether to protect her feelings or tell her the truth about the man she had married. "He's lying, Sophia," I said quietly. "I caught him going through my wallet. It's not the first time things have gone missing since I've been here. My mother's bracelet, my diamond earrings, cash from my purse." "That's ridiculous." Daniel spat. "Why would I need to steal from you? You're just a paranoid old woman." Sophia looked between us, uncertainty clouding her features. "Mom, that doesn't make sense. Daniel wouldn't." "Ask him what he was looking for in my drawer at 2 in the morning, I interrupted. "Ask him why he didn't turn on the light if he heard a noise. Ask him why he was opening my nightstand drawer instead of checking if I was okay." A flicker of doubt crossed Sophia's face. She turned to Daniel, who was still nursing his injured hand. "Daniel." For just a moment, panic flashed in his eyes before he composed himself. "I told you I heard a noise and came to check on her. I was looking for her heart medication. I thought maybe she'd fallen or was having a health issue." "I don't take heart medication," I pointed out. "You know that." "Well, I don't know what pills you take," he snapped. "I was trying to help." The children appeared then, Anthony rubbing his eyes sleepily, Isabella clutching her teddy bear. "Mommy? Daddy? What's happening?" Anthony asked. Sophia quickly went to them. "Nothing, sweetheart. Grandma and Daddy just had a little misunderstanding. Let's get you back to bed." She ushered the children back to their rooms, leaving Daniel and me in an icy standoff. He glared at me with naked hatred now that Sophia wasn't present. You've overstayed your welcome, Margaret, he said in a low, threatening voice. It's time for you to move back to your own place. I won $5,000 on a lottery ticket yesterday, I told him, watching his eyes widen with surprise and then narrow with calculation. That's what you were looking for, wasn't it? You overheard my call to the lottery office. He didn't deny it. You should be sharing that with family. After all we've done for you, letting you stay here. Letting me stay here? I repeated incredulously. I pay $800 a month toward your mortgage. I cook, clean, and provide free childcare. I've been subsidizing your golf games and whatever else you've been spending money on while pretending to look for work. His face darkened. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? You're not looking for work, Daniel. You haven't been for months. I don't know what you're doing all day, but it's not job hunting. Before he could respond, Sophia returned, her face pale and drawn. She looked at Daniel, then at me. The kids are back in bed, she said quietly. Now, can someone please tell me what's really going on? Daniel immediately launched into his version of events again. But Sophia held up a hand to stop him. She turned to me. Mom, tell me your side. All of it. I took a deep breath. Sophia, I've been noticing things missing for months. Small amounts of money, some of my jewelry. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to cause problems. But yesterday, I won $5,000 on a scratch-off lottery ticket. I didn't tell anyone except when I called the lottery office to arrange to pick up my winnings. Daniel must have overheard me. Tonight I set a trap because I suspected someone was taking my things, and I caught Daniel going through my nightstand, looking for the ticket. Sophia's face crumpled. Daniel, is this true? Of course not, he exclaimed. Your mother's making up stories. She's always hated me. Always thought I wasn't good enough for you. Now she's trying to drive a wedge between us. Then what were you doing in her room? Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I told you I heard a noise. Stop lying, I interrupted. The lottery ticket is right here. I reached into my nightgown and pulled out the folded ticket from my bra. I kept it with me because I didn't trust him. And I was right not to. Daniel's eyes fixed on the ticket, and something in his expression changed. Desperation replaced anger. Sophia, baby, it's not what it looks like. We're struggling financially. Your mother knows that. I thought maybe she could help us out more than she has been. By stealing from her in the middle of the night? Sophia's voice had hardened. That's your explanation? Daniel reached for her, but she stepped back. You don't understand the pressure I've been under, he pleaded. The bills are piling up, and your mother's sitting on money that could help our family. It's not your money to take, Sophia said quietly. And we wouldn't be in this situation if you had actually been looking for a job these past 6 months. She turned to me, tears glistening in her eyes. Mom, did you really set a trap for him? I nodded. I put a mousetrap in the drawer. I needed to know for sure. A hint of a smile flickered across her face despite the tears. You always were resourceful. Daniel wasn't giving up. Sophia, you're not going to take her word over mine, are you? I'm your husband. We've been married for 10 years. She's trying to manipulate you. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. Where have you really been going every day, Daniel? If you're not job hunting, what have you been doing? He faltered, and in that hesitation Sophia saw the truth. You've been lying to me, she said. About everything. Not everything, he insisted. I love you. I love our family. Then tell me the truth. Right now. Daniel's shoulders sagged. For a moment I thought he might actually confess, but then his expression hardened. This is between you and me, Sophia. Not her. He jerked his head toward me. Ask your mother to leave and we can talk privately. No, Sophia said firmly. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of her. His face flushed with anger. Fine. You want the truth? The truth is that your mother has been interfering in our marriage from day one. She's never thought I was good enough for you. She's been turning you against me bit by bit. And now she's making up these accusations because she wants you all to herself. I started to protest, but Sophia raised a hand to stop me. That's not the truth, Daniel. That's just more deflection. What have you been doing instead of looking for work? Where does the money for your golf games come from? Why were you in my mother's room in the middle of the night? Daniel's gaze darted between us, like a cornered animal searching for escape. Finally, he snapped. You know what? I don't need this interrogation. I'm going out. At 2:30 in the morning? Sophia asked incredulously. Yes. I need some air. He stormed past us, pausing at the door to glare at me. This isn't over, Margaret. We listened to his heavy footsteps on the stairs, then the slam of the front door, followed by the roar of his car engine as he backed out of the driveway. Sophia sank onto the edge of my bed, her body suddenly seeming small and fragile. I'm so sorry, Mom, she whispered. I had no idea. I sat beside her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart. I should have seen it, she said, tears flowing freely now. There were signs. The unexplained absences. The secret of phone calls. The way he always had money for himself but claimed we were broke. She looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed. Did he really steal your jewelry? I nodded. I think so. Things started disappearing not long after I moved in. Small things at first easy to dismiss as misplaced. But then my mother's silver bracelet vanished, and I knew I hadn't lost it. I didn't want to cause problems. And I didn't want to see the truth, Sophia admitted. Even though it was right in front of me. She straightened her shoulders. First thing tomorrow we're changing the locks. Tonight, we'll put a chair under the doorknob if we have to. We spent the rest of that night really talking for the first time in years. Sophia confessed that their marriage had been struggling for much longer than I realized. Daniel had grown distant, irritable, protective of his phone. She'd found receipts for expensive restaurants on dates when he claimed to be working late. Once, she found women's perfume on his collar that wasn't hers. I convinced myself I was imagining things, she said. For the kids' sake. For the sake of our 10 years together. I held her as she cried. This strong, beautiful daughter of mine who had always tried to see the best in people. Even when they didn't deserve it. Just like I had with her father. What are we going to do? She asked as dawn began to break, pale light filtering through the curtains. I squeezed her hand. We're going to start over. Both of us. When Daniel returned home at 7 a.m., disheveled and reeking of alcohol, he found us sitting calmly at the kitchen table, drinking coffee. The children were still asleep upstairs. We need to talk, Sophia said, her voice steady. Daniel's bloodshot eyes narrowed. About what? Your mother's delusions. About the fact that I want you out of this house by the end of the day, Sophia replied. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. This is my house too. You can't just kick me out. Actually, I can. The mortgage is in my name because your credit was too poor when we bought it. Remember? Sophia's voice was calm, but I could see her hands trembling around her coffee mug. I've already called a locksmith. He'll be here at noon. Daniel's face contorted with rage. You're choosing her over me? After 10 years of marriage. I'm choosing myself, Sophia corrected him. And my children. I deserve better than a man who lies, cheats, and steals from my mother. Cheats. He tried to look confused, but the panic in his eyes gave him away. What are you talking about? Jasmine from your office called your phone while you were out, Sophia said. I answered it. She was quite surprised to hear your wife's voice instead of yours. Apparently, you told her you were divorced. The color drained from Daniel's face. Sophia, I can explain. Save it, she interrupted. I've heard enough explanations to last a lifetime. Just pack your things and go. For a moment I thought he might become violent. His hands clenched into fists, and he took a step toward Sophia. I stood up immediately, placing myself between them. Don't, I warned him. The neighbors already heard you shouting last night. One more disturbance, and I'll call the police myself. He glared at me with pure hatred. This is all your fault. You turned her against me. No, Daniel, Sophia said, standing to join me. You did that all on your own. He looked between us, perhaps realizing for the first time that he had truly lost. Without another word, he stormed upstairs. We heard drawers slamming, closet doors banging as he packed his belongings. The children woke up during the commotion, confused and frightened by the tension in the house. Sophia took them to the backyard to play while Daniel loaded his car. I stayed inside, watching him like a hawk to ensure he didn't take anything that wasn't his. Before he left, he paused at the front door. "You'll regret this," he said, his voice cold. "Both of you." "The only thing I regret," Sophia replied, "is not seeing you for who you really are sooner." After he drove away, Sophia broke down again. The children clung to her, asking where Daddy was going, why he was taking his clothes when he would be back. She did her best to explain in terms they could understand. Daddy needed to live somewhere else for a while. Mommy and Daddy needed some time apart to figure things out. Later that day, after the locksmith had come and gone, after we'd changed the passwords on all the accounts, after Sophia had called her lawyer to begin divorce proceedings, we sat on the front porch swing watching the sunset. "What do we do now?" Sophia asked, echoing her question from the early morning hours. I took her hand. "Now we rebuild. Together." Over the next few weeks, we uncovered the full extent of Daniel's deception. He hadn't been laid off. He'd been fired for inappropriate behavior with a coworker, the same Jasmine who had called his phone. He'd been living a double life, spending money we thought he didn't have on his affair, lying about his whereabouts, draining their joint savings account bit by bit. Sophia was devastated but also relieved. The constant gaslighting, the subtle undermining of her confidence, the financial strain, it all made sense now. She'd been carrying the weight of a failing marriage by herself, believing she was somehow at fault. "I should have told you," I said one night as we sorted through bills at the kitchen table. "I saw the signs, but I didn't want to interfere." "You were right not to," Sophia replied. "I wouldn't have believed you. I needed to see it for myself." A month after Daniel left, we made a decision. The house held too many painful memories, and the mortgage was more than Sophia could afford on her own. We decided to sell it and find a fresh start. I used my lottery winnings as a down payment on a small but charming apartment in a different part of town, close to a commercial space that would be perfect for my long-deferred dream, a flower shop. Sophia and the children moved in with me temporarily, while we sorted out the finances and looked for a place of their own. It wasn't easy. The children missed their father, though he rarely called and often canceled scheduled visits at the last minute. Sophia struggled with feelings of failure and betrayal. I grappled with guilt, wondering if I could have protected my daughter from this pain somehow. But slowly, day by day, we began to heal. Sophia threw herself into her graphic design work, securing more clients and building her portfolio. I started planning my flower shop in earnest, researching suppliers, creating business plans, and transforming the commercial space into my vision. The day I officially opened Margaret's Blooms, 6 months after that fateful night with the mousetrap, was one of the proudest moments of my life. Sophia created beautiful signage and a website for me. The children helped arrange flowers and greet customers. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life, not just supporting someone else's. As for Daniel, we heard through mutual friends that he had lost his new job when his boss discovered why he'd really been fired from his previous position. Apparently, he had tried the same inappropriate behavior with a coworker, who wasn't as receptive as Jasmine had been. Last we heard, he was living in a cheap apartment across town, behind on child support payments, and facing legal consequences for financial improprieties that came to light during the divorce proceedings. Sophia was still healing, still finding her way back to herself. But I could see glimpses of the strong, vibrant woman I'd raised, the one who had gotten buried beneath years of subtle manipulation and emotional abuse. She started going out with friends again, rediscovering hobbies she'd abandoned, laughing more freely. One evening, as we were closing up the shop together, Sophia often helped out after she finished her design work for the day. She looked around at the colorful blooms surrounding us and smiled. "You know what, Mom? I think we're going to be okay." I hugged her tightly, breathing in the sweet scent of freesias that filled the air. "We already are, sweetheart. We already are." It's been a year since that night when the snap of a mousetrap changed everything. Sometimes when I'm arranging roses in the shop or helping Isabella with her homework, I still find myself marveling at how different our lives are now. How a single moment of standing up for myself created a ripple effect that transformed not just my life, but my daughter's and grandchildren's as well. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Daniel fought it every step of the way, not because he wanted the marriage to work, but because he wanted access to Sophia's growing income and the portion of the house sale proceeds that was rightfully hers. His true colors showed more vividly with each court appearance, with each nasty email, with each manipulation of the children during his increasingly rare visits. "It's like I was married to a stranger for 10 years. Sophia confided one night as we shared a bottle of wine on the balcony of our apartment. The children were asleep, and the spring air was fragrant with newly bloomed jasmine from the planter boxes I'd installed. "Not a stranger," I corrected gently. "A master manipulator. There's a difference. He showed you exactly what he wanted you to see." She nodded, swirling the ruby liquid in her glass thoughtfully. "You know what's strange? I don't miss him. Not the real him anyway. I miss who I thought he was. I miss the idea of our family intact. But when I think about who he actually is..." She shuddered slightly. "I feel nothing but relief that he's gone." I reached over and squeezed her hand. My beautiful, resilient daughter. Watching her rediscover herself after years of subtle emotional abuse had been like witnessing a flower unfurl after a long winter, tentative at first, then with increasing confidence, ultimately blooming into something even more spectacular than before. The flower shop had exceeded my modest expectations. It turned out that my decades of dreaming hadn't been idle. I'd been mentally planning every detail. From the antique cart that displayed seasonal arrangements near the entrance to the children's corner, where little ones could create their own miniature bouquets while their parents shopped. Margaret's Blooms had quickly developed a loyal clientele, who appreciated my old-fashioned approach to customer service and my knack for creating arrangements that seemed to perfectly capture whatever sentiment they were trying to express. "You're not just selling flowers," a regular customer told me once. "You're selling moments, memories. The way you listen to what people need and translate that into something they can give to someone they love, that's a gift." Those words had brought tears to my eyes because they articulated exactly what I'd always hoped to create. Not just a business, but a place of connection and beauty in a world that often felt too harsh, too rushed. Sophia had found her own path to renewal through her graphic design work. What had once been a part-time job to supplement Daniel's income, or so we thought, had blossomed into a thriving freelance business. She'd created a home office in our apartment where she worked while the children were at school, and her client list had grown to include several local businesses and even 2 national brands. "I forgot how much I loved this," she told me one day, eyes bright with excitement as she showed me a branding package she created for a new boutique downtown. For years, Daniel made little comments about my hobby, like it wasn't real work. He'd look over my shoulder and suggest changes, usually making things worse. After a while, I stopped showing him my designs altogether. "They never wanted us to shine too brightly," I remarked, thinking back to Sophia's father and his constant belittling of my dreams. "Men like that, they fear our light." "Well, we're practically blinding now," she laughed, and the sound was like music, unrestrained, joyful, free. The children adapted to our new life with the remarkable resilience that young ones often show. Anthony, now 9, had struggled the most initially. He'd idolized his father and couldn't understand why Daddy had to leave. The canceled visits and broken promises had been hard on him, but he'd found an outlet in the junior gardening program I'd started behind the flower shop, where he showed a natural talent for nurturing growing things. Isabella, at 7, seemed almost relieved by the new family arrangement. "It's quieter now," she observed one day while helping me water the shop's plants. "Daddy always made Mommy cry when he thought we couldn't hear." Her simple observation had pierced my heart. Children see and hear so much more than we realize. I wondered how many tears Sophia had shed in private, how many nights she'd muffled her sobs into her pillow while I remained oblivious in my guest room down the hall. Daniel's presence in our lives diminished gradually, like a shadow receding as the sun climbs higher in the sky. His visits with the children became less frequent, his excuses more elaborate. Child support payments arrived late or not at all, despite the court orders. Sophia didn't push the issue at first, not wanting to antagonize him, but when it began affecting her ability to provide for the children's needs, she finally took legal action. That's when things got ugly. I remember the day we discovered just how far Daniel's deception went. Sophia had been summoned to a meeting with her lawyer, who had received some concerning documents during the ongoing child support enforcement process. I watched the children after school, keeping them entertained at the shop, wondering what new development had emerged. When Sophia returned, her face was ashen. She waited until the children were occupied with a movie that evening before she told me what she'd learned. "He wasn't just fired for inappropriate behavior," she said, her voice barely above a whisper despite the children being out of earshot. "He was embezzling from the company. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. They had evidence, but they agreed not to press charges if he left quietly." I sat heavily on the sofa beside her. "Embezzling? For how long?" "Years, apparently. Almost our entire marriage." She ran a trembling hand through her hair. "And there's more. He has another child, Mom. A 3-year-old boy with Jasmine." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. 3 years old? But that means... Yes. She got pregnant while I was carrying Isabella. Sophia's voice was flat, emotionless, as if she'd moved beyond pain to some numb place beyond. "He's been supporting them or trying to this whole time. That's where the money was going. That's why there was never enough, why we were always struggling despite his supposedly good salary." I pulled her into my arms as the tears finally came. Not the devastated sobs of a woman mourning her marriage, but the outraged cries of someone who's discovered the depth of a betrayal that stretched back further than imaginable. "All those years," she choked out. "All those years I pinched pennies, bought second-hand clothes for our children, skipped doctor's appointments for myself because we couldn't afford it. Meanwhile, he had another family. Another child. How could I not have known?" "Because he didn't want you to know," I said firmly. "Because he constructed an elaborate lie and maintained it every single day. That's not your failure, Sophia. That's his." Later that night, after Sophia had fallen into an exhausted sleep, I sat on our balcony watching the city lights flicker in the distance. I thought about patterns, how they repeat across generations. How my ex-husband had betrayed me, and now Daniel had betrayed my daughter. The difference was that I had let my betrayal define me for too long, had allowed it to shrink my world to a narrow set of expectations and sacrifices. Sophia was already showing signs of breaking that pattern, of refusing to be diminished by what had happened to her. The next morning I found her at the kitchen table with her laptop open, spreadsheets and documents spread around her. She looked up when I entered, a steely determination in her eyes that reminded me of myself at my strongest moments. "I'm going after everything he owes," she announced. "Every penny of back child support, every hidden asset. Not just for our kids but for me. For the years I spent believing his lies." I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat across from her. "You know he'll fight it." "Let him," she said with a shrug. "I've got nothing but time and righteous anger on my side. Plus a really good lawyer who's now working on contingency because she's so offended by what he's done." I couldn't help but smile. This was the daughter I'd raised. Fierce, principled, unwilling to back down when she knew she was right. Daniel had suppressed that part of her for years, but it had never truly disappeared. The legal battle that followed was brutal but necessary. Daniel's web of financial deception unraveled thread by thread as Sophia's lawyer dug deeper. We discovered he'd maintained a separate bank account for years, had taken out loans in Sophia's name without her knowledge, had even mortgaged items that belonged to her before they were married. And through it all, he maintained his innocence, painting himself as the victim of a vindictive ex-wife and her interfering mother. He told anyone who would listen that Sophia had driven him to seek comfort elsewhere, that I had plotted to destroy their marriage from the beginning. Some people believed him. His parents, a few mutual friends who'd only ever seen his charming public facade. But the evidence was insurmountable. When confronted with bank statements, secret phone records, and testimony from former co-workers about his embezzlement, Daniel's carefully constructed image began to crumble. His new employer, a friend who'd hired him despite the circumstances of his previous firing, finally looked into the rumors and discovered Daniel had already begun siphoning money from company accounts. This time they pressed charges. The day Daniel was arrested at his apartment, Sophia received a call from his sister Rachel, who had always been kind to her. Rachel was in tears. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't want to believe it. He's my brother and I thought you and your mother might be exaggerating. But he's been stealing from our parents too. Dad's retirement fund. Almost half of it's gone." Sophia was quiet for a long moment before responding. "It's not your fault, Rachel. He fooled all of us. After she hung up, she turned to me with a look of sad resignation. There's always more, isn't there? Just when you think you've uncovered the extent of it, another layer appears. I nodded, thinking of the Russian nesting dolls my mother had kept on her mantel, each one opening to reveal another, smaller version inside, seemingly endless. Some people are like that. Deception all the way down. I don't want to be bitter, Sophia confessed. I don't want the kids to see me consumed by anger and resentment. But sometimes I feel so stupid. So completely fooled. You weren't stupid, I told her firmly. You were trusting. There's a difference. And now you're showing the children something even more important. How to reclaim your power. How to rebuild after betrayal. Daniel was sentenced to 3 years for embezzlement and fraud. The sentencing hearing was on a crisp fall day. The kind that always made me think of new beginnings, of turning pages. Sophia chose not to attend, instead taking the children on a long-planned trip to the Science Museum. I went in her place, not out of any desire to see Daniel's humiliation, but as a witness, someone who would observe this final chapter and close the book definitively. He looked smaller somehow in his dark suit, his shoulders hunched as the judge delivered the sentence. When he was led away, he glanced back once, scanning the courtroom. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw something flicker there. Not remorse exactly, but perhaps a grudging acknowledgement that he had finally been outplayed by the women he had underestimated for so long. I didn't feel triumph in that moment, just a weary relief that this chapter was finally ending. Outside the courthouse, the autumn air was brisk, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with it, then called Sophia. It's done, I told her when she answered. 3 years. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear the children's excited voices in the background, Anthony explaining something about dinosaurs to his sister. Thank you for going, she finally said. I just couldn't face him. You never have to see him again if you don't want to, I assured her. It's over. Not quite, she said, and there was a note in her voice I hadn't heard before. Something light, almost buoyant. I have news. I wasn't going to tell you yet, but I've met someone. My heart gave a little jump. Oh, don't get too excited, she laughed. It's very new. He's a client. Commissioned me to design a logo for his pediatric practice. We've only been on 2 coffee dates, but he's kind, Mom. Really kind. And he makes me laugh. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I said, feeling a rush of emotion. You deserve kindness. You deserve laughter. We're taking it extremely slow, she added quickly. I'm not ready for anything serious, and the kids certainly aren't ready to meet anyone new. But it feels good to know that part of me isn't broken. The part that can trust, that can see good in people. As we talked, I walked toward my car, my steps lighter than they had been when I arrived at the courthouse. Life was moving forward as it always does. The pain didn't disappear, but it changed shape, became something we could carry without being crushed by its weight. Back at the flower shop, I found a delivery waiting. A rare variety of orchid I'd ordered weeks ago for a special client. Its intricate blooms were just beginning to open, delicate and complex. I carefully transferred it to a place of honor in the shop window, adjusting the lighting to showcase its beauty. One of my regular customers, an elderly man who bought fresh flowers for his wife of 60 years every Friday, watched me with appreciation. That's quite something, he commented. Looks like it's been through a lot to bloom like that. The best ones usually have, I replied with a smile. Over the next 6 months, our new normal solidified into something that felt not just stable but joyful. Sophia's business continued to thrive, and she eventually moved into her own apartment with the children, not far from mine, just 2 floors down in the same building. Close enough for family dinners and grandma sleepovers, but with enough separation to give her the independence she needed to continue her journey of self-rediscovery. The flower shop became a community hub of sorts. I started offering workshops, flower arranging for adults, plant care for children, special sessions for seniors from the nearby retirement community. It wasn't just a business anymore. It was the fulfillment of a dream I'd carried for decades, nurtured in silence while I focused on more pressing needs. Anthony and Isabella flourished in their new environment. The initial pain of their parents' separation gave way to the stability of our new family configuration. They still saw their father occasionally after his release, supervised visits arranged through the family court system, but these were brief, awkward encounters that left them confused and often upset. Daniel tried to win them over with extravagant gifts and promises he couldn't keep, seemingly unable to understand that what they really needed from him was consistency and genuine interest in their lives. "Why doesn't Daddy ask about my science project?" Anthony asked after one such visit. "I told him I won first prize and he just said, 'That's nice,' and kept talking about the motorcycle he's going to buy when he has money again." Sophia had knelt to his level, taking his small hands in hers. "Sometimes adults have trouble focusing on what's really important," she explained. "That doesn't mean your achievement isn't amazing. It is, and we're so proud of you." Later, she confided to me how difficult these moments were. Trying to help the children understand their father's limitations without demonizing him, wanting to protect them from disappointment while acknowledging their feelings. "I never wanted this for them," she said. "A part-time father who doesn't really see them. You've given them something more valuable," I assured her. "You've shown them what integrity looks like, what it means to value yourself enough to demand better treatment. That lesson will serve them their entire lives." The pediatrician, whose name was Alejandro, became a more regular presence in Sophia's life. True to her word, she took things painfully slowly, meeting for coffee or lunch, talking for hours on the phone after the children were in bed. It was 4 months before she agreed to a proper dinner date, and 6 before she introduced him to me. I liked him immediately. There was a genuineness to him, a thoughtful way of speaking that suggested he chose his words carefully because he meant them. He asked questions and listened to the answers. He talked about his patients with warmth and his family, 2 sisters and a wide network of cousins, with affectionate humor. Most importantly, he looked at Sophia like she was someone valuable, someone whose thoughts and feelings mattered deeply. "What do you think?" Sophia asked nervously after he'd left that first evening. I said slowly, "that you've remembered what you deserve." She blushed like a teenager, but her smile was radiant. 2 years have passed since that night with the mousetrap. The flower shop has expanded to include a small garden cafe where customers can enjoy a cup of tea or coffee surrounded by blooming plants. Sophia's design business is so successful that she's had to hire an assistant. The children are thriving in school. Anthony just won another science fair with a project on plant growth, and Isabella has discovered a passion for storytelling that has her teachers amazed. Daniel was released from prison a few months ago. He occasionally calls the children, but the conversations are short and stilted. He moved to another state for a fresh start, which is probably best for everyone. Sophia has reached a place where she can think of him without pain, just a distant sadness for what might have been if he had been the man he pretended to be. Alejandro has become a steadfast presence in our lives. He takes the children hiking on weekends, helps Anthony with science projects, listens to Isabella's elaborate stories with genuine interest. Last month, he asked for my blessing before proposing to Sophia. "I know your approval means the world to her," he said earnestly, "and I promise you I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of her trust." I hugged him tightly. "You already are." Sophia said yes, of course. The wedding will be small, just family and close friends, held in the botanical garden where they had their first real date. Isabella will be the flower girl, proudly scattering petals from arrangements I'll create myself. Anthony will carry the rings, a responsibility he takes very seriously. Sometimes I look back on that night. The snap of the mousetrap, Daniel's howl of pain, the unraveling of a decade of lies, and marvel at how a moment of courage can change everything. If I hadn't set that trap, if I hadn't stood my ground, where would we be now? Still caught in the web of Daniel's deception? Still dimming our light to accommodate his darkness? Instead, we're here, in this bright, beautiful life we've built from the ruins of what came before. My flower shop, Sophia's thriving business, the children's growing confidence, a future filled with possibilities we couldn't have imagined 2 years ago. Last week, a young woman came into the shop, her eyes red from crying, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As I helped her select flowers for her mother's birthday, she confided that she was going through a painful divorce, that her husband had betrayed her in ways she was still discovering. "I don't know how to start over," she admitted. "I feel like I've lost everything." I arranged a bouquet of resilient blooms, sturdy sunflowers, enduring eucalyptus, roses that had weathered an early frost to bloom even more vibrantly. You haven't lost everything, I told her, handing her the finished arrangement. You've found yourself. And that's where all new beginnings start. She looked at me with surprise, then dawning hope. You sound like you know. I do, I said, thinking of the mousetrap, the midnight confrontation, the painful truths that had set us free. Sometimes you have to set a trap to catch what's been stealing your joy. And once you do, once you face it directly, that's when you can finally begin to build something better. She left with her flowers and a little more strength in her posture. As I watched her go, I felt a familiar surge of gratitude for the path that had led me here. Not despite its hardships, but because of them. Each challenge overcome, each moment of courage had been a stepping stone to this life I now cherished. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Dress fitting this afternoon. Need moral support. Bring tissues. I smiled, gathering my purse and keys. Another milestone, another memory in the making. This was the reward for our courage, not just survival but revival. The chance to bloom again, more gloriously than before. As I locked up the shop, I caught my reflection in the window. A woman in her early 60s with silver-streaked hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Not the frightened, uncertain mother-in-law who had set a mousetrap in her drawer 2 years ago, but someone stronger, wiser, more fully herself. Well done, Margaret, I whispered to my reflection. Well done indeed.